I don't remember anything that the author said. Nothing. Except for one thing. Somebody asked the author, how do you know if you're a writer? My ears perked up. I was curious. I didn't think I was going to be a writer when I grew up. I was pretty sure I was going to be a professional basketball player.
Yeah.
Didn't work out. Don't know why. But I listened. The author thought about it for a minute. She said, how do you know if you're a writer? And she said, writers write. And I was like, duh. The definition of a writer is that they write. But then I thought about it, maybe she's got a point. Writers write. Well, do I write? Will I write in school when my teachers tell me to? When I write for homework? When I remember to do my homework? Or do I write on my own for fun? The answer was, no. I never did. And so if you do already, you're ahead of me, because I didn't. And so I decided on that very day in 7th grade, I remember it so clearly, that I was not a writer, and that I never would be. And every time I got an idea for a story after that, because everybody gets an idea for a story sometimes, where you're like walking in the street and you see an old lady, and you're like, wouldn't it be cool if that old lady turned humongous and attacked a city or something? The answer is yes, it would be awesome. Like, crushing people with her walker. I'd always write like a paragraph or two, but I'd not always quit and be like, who am I kidding? I know I'm not a writer. But I'm a writer now, so why? I think this is why. Raise your hand if you've heard of G.I. Joes. Okay, a lot of people. Hands down. If you don't know what G.I. Joes are, they're these little action figures. They've got like masks and guns. They're kind of like mini Barbies with guns. Okay? So I used to play with these G.I. Joes all the time when I was a kid, and it would always go the same way. I would take one in each hand, and one was usually the cool kid from school, and the other one was me. Not the coolest kid. And the cool kid would say something mean and funny to me, and all the other G.I. Joes would laugh. And then I would say something awesome and hilarious back to the cool kid, and all the other G.I. Joes would go, oh! Because I had dissed him, and I feel good about myself. It's good company. It's not always easy to think if we could come back to the cool kids. Sometimes he would say something mean and funny to me, and I would just beat him up, like, which was just as satisfying. So I used to do this for like hours and hours a day. The other thing I used to like to do when I was a kid was I had a basketball hoop in my driveway, and it was a very cool basketball hoop because it could go up to 10 feet or down to 6 feet. And then I really wanted to get good at basketball. I should have left it up at 10 feet and just practiced my jump shot all day long, practice my form. But I thought it was much more fun to pretend to be good at basketball. So I put it down to 6 feet. And I would like dunk and shoot 3-pointers and take fadeaways. And the whole time I would be talking to myself and tell myself these stories about me making the NBA, what team I would be in, winning the championship, hours a day. But eventually, things changed. When I was 15 years old, I went away for the summer. When I came back, I went and took out my G.I. Joes, and I didn't find any G.I. Joes. I found a box of heads and arms and legs of G.I. Joes. And I was like, what happened? What happened to my G.I. Joes? What happened, it turned out, I eventually figured out, was that my little brother had taken my G.I. Joes and a hammer and smashed every G.I. Joe that I owned. He like put them all in a line apparently. He went like, and destroyed them. Because he's a psychopath. Hey, no destroying each other. So, my G.I. Joes were destroyed. Because I like you guys so much, I'm going to give you a little bonus to the story that I almost never tell kids. This is the truth. I've recently mentioned to my brother that I sometimes told this story about him, and he said, that is not true. That is not what happened. And I was like, okay, what happened? And he goes, you never found their heads. And I was like, what? And he goes, I kept their heads in my safe. Sick child! Proof! Right there. My brother destroyed my G.I. Joes. They were gone. I moved to New York City. I didn't have a basketball hoop anymore. So G.I. Joes destroyed. Basketball was gone. What did I do? I became a teacher. I started telling stories to kids. Eventually, I started writing them down. And when I write down my stories, it always goes the same way. I tell them out loud to myself, and I'd type them. And one day I was sitting at home, telling a story out loud to myself and typing it, and I suddenly realized telling a story out loud and going like this is just about exactly the same thing as telling a story out loud and going like this with G.I. Joes. Or telling a story out loud and going like this on a 6-foot basketball. And I suddenly realized, these days I spend about 2 or 3 hours a day writing. I spent 2 or 3 hours a day writing my whole life. I never wrote any of it down. But it's exactly the same thing that I do now and get paid to do. So if you ever find yourself doing things like playing or talking to yourself on a basketball court or staring out the window during math class making up stories, that's being a writer. And you can write it down now
I want to be a writer
or later. But it's the same thing. And next time your math teacher is like, hey, pay attention, what are you doing? You say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm preparing to be a writer. It'll work, I promise.